country runs the world's biggest AIDS treatment program. Of the estimated 38 million people with HIV in the world, about 8 million live here in South Africa. Now, we've come a really long way since the days when an HIV diagnosis was a death sentence. Deaths, in fact, have declined dramatically since 2005. So have infection rates. And nearly 6 million people of the 8 million with HIV in South Africa are on treatment. But even with these strides, many challenges remain. We know, for example, that women under 50 remain most vulnerable to infection. Now, a study released today has focused on quite an interesting demographic, couples, and offering couples screening and support. I'm joined now by Professor Nuala McGrath of the Human Sciences Research Council that conducted this Igugulethu study. Nuala, thank you so much for your time. I mean, it's completely fascinating that you're focusing on couples because obviously HIV is sexually transmitted, so it involves couples or coupling of some form. For the purpose of the study, how did you define a couple and why did you look at couples?
Thanks very much for this opportunity. So we allowed people in partnerships to define themselves as a couple as long as they saw each other as their primary partner. And the reason that and had been together for at least 6 months, we focus on couples because that we are trying to fill the gap that we see currently in couples where either one or both don't know their HIV status, or they actually do know their HIV status, but they haven't disclosed their HIV status to each other. So the goal of the Igugulethu study was to test whether this couples-focused intervention could help such couples to decide to test for HIV together, because there's evidence that when couples are both aware of their HIV status as a couple, they can then better respond and plan together.
And what did your study find? What have you discovered?
Well, so the intervention tried to support couples to learn more about HIV and other health conditions and to develop skills in how they can talk to each other about potentially sensitive topics. And so we're very happy to announce that 56% of the couples took up HIV testing together for the first time during the study. And all the couples at that HIV testing visit, we offered them the option to have their blood pressure, their weight and height measured, and to also have a blood glucose test to screen for diabetes. And we also offered them STI testing that included chlamydia and gonorrhea. And we found that all of the couples who took up HIV testing also actually had an appetite to take up all those other health screening options that we had offered. And so it's a great learning to see that there are couples out there who, if they can come together and decide to test for HIV, they actually are eager to learn about their health status as a couple more generally. And that's what we're excited about.
I mean, it is interesting, that it's an opportunity to get two people at once and test for a variety of health issues at the same time. If we focus just for a minute more on HIV, the diagnosis, it's no longer a death sentence. It absolutely can be managed. People still die from it, sadly, often because they're just not on the treatment yet. But that diagnosis is always going to be a shock. For a partner who believes they're in a monogamous relationship, I would imagine, and I know that you offer counselling, this adds a layer of emotion and complexity. Not only the shock and the fear that would come with the diagnosis, but perhaps betrayal and anger. Even if your partner's monogamous, but they haven't told you that they're HIV positive, that must be complicated. Does the study navigate those things? Were you able to manage those sorts of situations?
Yeah, and our approach is to bring couples together first. So as couples, they can learn with other couples about HIV and other conditions. And then we also separate couples into men and women only groups to give them a chance to discuss the barriers to HIV testing, the worries and concerns that they have. And then another part of our intervention is to bring a couple with a counsellor. Each couple gets the opportunity to discuss in that counselling session what the barriers are for them. And if they've got these new communication skills and a way of talking with each other that gives the opportunity for listening to each other about their concerns, then they often can find that actually some of the worries they have, they share those worries. And going through the testing together then becomes an opportunity for them to face this together. And in discussing before the testing all the potential outcomes that might happen and how they might respond to that, they can feel better prepared for receiving their results together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really nuanced and fascinating approach, in part to reaching the UNAIDS goals, the 90-90-90, which of course is 90% of people knowing their HIV status, 90% of those diagnosed on treatment, 90% of those on treatment successfully suppressing the virus. Given that we have the world's largest AIDS treatment program, we, I suppose, have to look at more and more ways of getting people who might otherwise be reluctant on board to get those tests, and also perhaps people who think that they are immune or safe in a relationship. Completely fascinating, and thank you so much just for giving us a snapshot of what it's all about. Much appreciated. That, of course, is Professor Nuala McGrath of the Human Sciences Research Council, conducted that Igugu letter study, which is focusing on couples and HIV/AIDS. Still ahead.